Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Soulforce Music YouTube channel. My name is Bigeleisen, and today I'm going to be walking you through a short video. It's on the what's called the extractive nature of most artistic institutions. And so this video will have two parts. One is talking about the current problems that exist within most artistic institutions, and really you could say most institutions in general, and what the Soulforce Music School aims to offer instead of that. So before I begin, I'm just going to check in and maybe speak a little bit about my own experience when it came to going through Conservatory, and then we'll dive right in. So I want to lead you through something called a check-in. So a check-in is something that you'll probably see pretty consistently on this channel, whereby we just take a moment to name and notice what emotions are present for us. So right now, for me, the most present emotion is actually it's anger. And just by naming that, I notice some relief around that. I notice some sadness. I notice joy. I notice a little bit of anxiety. And that's about what I've got. So maybe I'll take a few more seconds here, and if you just want to take a second and check in with what you've got. All right. So first I'll speak to my own experience when it came to conservatory training, both what I got out of it and also what I needed from it. And then I'm going to walk you through what I would call the extractive model of artistic institutions, or institutions in general. And this is not a comprehensive point of view. If you're looking for a more comprehensive exploration of this, I would recommend looking at really any work by Charles Eisenstein. Okay, so my experience when I went to Conservatory was one of a lot of frustration. So I was quite a successful young artist. I had many accolades. I was winning competitions and was quite well ranked in the young national opera singers circuit. And so I had high hopes of entering Conservatory, and upon entering it, I started to lose my voice about a couple months in, and so here I was at the Eastern School of Music, and I was learning a great deal about theory and music history, and I was learning about some sort of vocal technique, and I was learning, and I was in all these ensembles. I was getting roles in the opera, and yet this fundamental thing, this fact that I kept losing my voice, was something that seemed that nobody had any answers to. And so I've since really discovered a way of being and a way of making music that allows me to take much better care of my voice, and a lot of it stems from stepping away from an extractive model of being towards a regenerative model of being. So let's dive into this. So I would say that a pretty typical experience for people who are in Conservatory, who've graduated from Conservatory, is that you find yourself, you've received some things, right? So you get some skills, you perhaps get some, you might have made some friends along the way, you get professional connections, you get experience in doing the things that you're passionate about, which is ideally, I guess, making music in some capacity, right? And also by the end of this time, this time of learning, you are entirely spent as a human being. Your creative, social, spiritual energies, you name it, they've all given way. And the odds are that you have been encouraged to treat yourself less than fairly over the past however many years, right? So you haven't slept all that well, you haven't seen your friends, you don't have time to talk to the people that you love. You're like eating boxes of Cheez-Its as a coping mechanism. Not firing shots, I've been there. But so this is kind of the standard, right? This is kind of the standard of arts institutions overall, educational institutions, but really institutions. So what I say extractive, an extractive mode of being, it's a mode of thinking in that we have this finite well of energy that's getting drawn out of us, and so this leads to a quality of depletion overall that's really not sustainable in the long term. So next I want to talk about why. Why are artistic institutions? What are the myths, or what are the ideas? What are the stories? And what are the plain hard facts around why most institutions are structured this way? And again, this list is not comprehensive by any means. This is just what I know to be true. So first is that there's a certain amount of financial necessity. So let's talk about that. So in our economy, there's a constant imperative towards growth. And again, this is something that draws really directly from Charles Eisenstein. So this growth mindset, things have to grow and grow and grow, will lead to an extractive quality of being. So the idea is that there's just a little bit extra that's added to there's the fair price, and then there's that little bit extra because it's the thought is that it's necessary to basically countermand the growth of the economy overall. And so this little bit extra has to come from somewhere. This little bit extra of drawing out of has to come from somewhere. And it comes from, in the case of artistic institutions, so it comes in the form of a pretty hefty paycheck that keeps getting bigger and bigger, tuition, right? And it also comes from the energy of the students and the faculty, in that there's more and more and more that's being demanded of them over the course of time. So the next thing is this, the current fallacy is that the quantity over quality. And this is really simple. It's just that the mode seems to be that, or the theory is that if you're just expected to make quantity and quantity and quantity and quantity, it's going to draw something magical out of you. And in my experience, what this actually does is just depletes the reservoir of overall creative energies and leaves people feeling hollow. And they might have things that are beautiful afterwards, but is it worth the price? So the next myth, or the next story that seems to be woven into the current model of education is that of the myth of limited time to learn. So most institutions will, you have this finite time that you have to learn everything you need to know about whatever it is. 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, and then you're gone. I have many friends who've gone through a master's program. It feels like that. You get there and you're gone. And so this is really hard on the students and the faculty because there's this, you just show up, you make connections, and then boom, they're torn away. But also this myth of limited time to learn, it puts an imperative in your system. This was what I experienced in myself anyway, which is that I've got to learn it all. I've got to learn it all right now. I got to do it all. I got to do it all right now. I'm never going to have time after this. All these connections, right? So this might be a subconscious motivator that's underneath that. So this is another myth or story that's woven into the current model of artistic educational institutions. So the next one is the myth of limited resources to learn from. So there once was a time when the knowledge about how to become a technically proficient artist, musician, was in the hands of just a few people. And it was kind of the way all around the world, for all disciplines, right? So if you wanted to become a carpenter 100 years ago, you needed to be around a master carpenter because learning it by yourself was going to be a really hard process. You could do it, but it would take a lot longer. And similarly with classical music or with any kind of really demanding music or art form, there was a certain group of people who had the knowledge that you needed, and that's why you went there. And so that myth, so that used to be true, but nowadays with the advent of the internet, the knowledge is really no longer in the hands of just a few people. So maybe for something like having somebody working with you one-on-one on voice lessons, that's still probably going to be an incredibly helpful thing. But learning music theory or learning music history or learning French or German or really any of the technical, of the information-oriented components of a conservatory education are not exclusive to that institution anymore. Something that comes up for me is it's also, it's also oriented towards, this quality of institution is also oriented towards this thing that you have to suffer for your art, right? So that's something else that seems to be woven into the current matrix of ideas that makes up our current artistic educational institutions. So you have to suffer for your art. You have to sacrifice it all to become a great artist. And so that story has people who back up that story, right? Class Van Gogh, something like that, right? People who just burn their whole lives out, who are just miserable. They cut off their ear. For their art, for the sake of their art. And so what I would say is that to me, those people seem to be exceptions. People who are exceptions to the rule that you really the way towards creating great art is to care for yourself, to care for the people around you. And we'll dive into that more in just a moment. But so there's this myth of, I've got to suffer for my art. I've got to sacrifice it all. I don't have time to talk with my friends. I've got to put this all into this thing. And so we'll touch on that. And there's also a story that which pervades our entire educational system, which is that people need to be forced to learn things. So you have to be forced to sit down and learn things, because otherwise you won't learn them. So this story is also woven into the matrix of what we call conservatory education or artistic educational institutions right now. I want to offer just a caveat. So there are things that that artistic institutions, our current artistic institutions, do really well. You do get to go to one place to learn about music theory and music history, and you do get to have a teacher who's going to spend time with you one-on-one and just spend time with you and let you learn and let you grow. The fact that there's a built-in artistic community, people that are working toward noble goals with you, is something that's really beautiful. And that the demand for learning a technical craft is high. It is high, and you need people with experience to guide you on this. What we're looking for is a model, actually, that offers all of these things within a matrix that's not extractive. So is it possible? So basically what we're positing is a hypothesis. Is it possible for an institution to offer all these things, to offer a sense of community, to be able to learn a technical craft at a very high level, to be able to have time one-on-one with somebody who really knows what they're talking about when it comes to the ins and outs of a highly demanding musical career, and so much more? Can an institution exist that offers the benefits of a traditional conservatory without it being an extractive model, or rather a regenerative model? So a little parallel that came to mind for me, and just to make things clear about what I exactly mean by extractive versus regenerative, is to talk about traditional agriculture and regenerative agriculture. So in traditional agriculture, what happens is you plant your seeds and you work really hard, you push your plow and what have you, and eventually you get a yield. So you get something out of it. But the overall health of or traditional Western agriculture, you get a yield out of it, but something is drawn out of the soil that's not put back. It's the nutrients that are necessary for the soil are not put back. And so eventually what happens with this model, and we see this actually in Western agriculture all around the world, is that the soil depletion gets to a point where the soil can no longer yield anything. The yields get less and less and less and there's more and more effort that's required, and eventually it just burns out. So this is what I would say is a beautiful parallel. So the other model is regenerative agriculture. So what regenerative agriculture does really well is that the focus is on, yes, high yields. You want to be able to eat your food, but that the overall health of the soil is also a metric of how well you're doing. So there's some components and some parallels. They're not exactly clear enough for me to speak to in the video at this moment. But the idea is that you have a model that over time actually gets easier and easier for you to draw food from, instead of harder and harder and harder. So it's just allowing for this possibility that I think invites a different quality of whatever system structure you're trying to set up, whether it's a farm or an artistic educational institution. So what's really cool about regenerative agriculture is that the yields are oftentimes higher per acre than traditional. They are almost invariably higher than traditional agriculture, and that's for a variety of reasons. But the idea is that actually making a parallel here is allowing for the possibility that perhaps a regenerative institution, your creative output and your capacity to learn difficult material could actually be higher than if you within this more abusive, extractive mode of learning. What we're positing in this model is that first and foremost that what people are so that this institution is not just measured by the quantity, what people are achieving, but it's measured by the quality of what people are achieving. So what's like how beautiful, how deeply moving is something that somebody creates, but also that another measurement of what's happening is the overall well-beingness of the community. So that an institution is measured not only by the quantity of its output, but by the quality of its output. And so part of that quality is the quality of the art that's being produced. So what kind of impact is it having in the community? Not just what accolades are it receiving, but also the quality of the people that are making it. Are they healthy? Are they happy while they're in the institution and afterwards? Do they feel more supported, more whole, more energized after leaving an institution than before they joined it? So addressing this model of the scarcity of time, 2 years or 4 years. So a regenerative model would be something where students aren't ejected after graduating from the institution. And so they would be welcome to stay and continue to learn, continue to have their teachers as resources, but also continue to be resources for new students. So this gets at the other point of the scarcity of information resources. So this myth that it's only the teachers that are available for you to learn from. If the students are around and that have graduated, then they become more learning resources for the students who are currently enrolled in the institution. So another potential model for a regenerative institution would be that art doesn't draw from self-abuse and self-denial, but from that deep inner impulse of the self. So this deep creative fire that we all have access to, and that you may have had experience of having that be drawn upon, this is the basis of the institution. And that, again, so just touching back to that you as an individual, that your health, that your well-being is actually tied to the output of your art. And that part of a role of a regenerative institution, which is what we're aiming to make with Soulforce Music, is one where that tie-in is actually the cornerstone of the educational model, not something that's seen as an extra bit to add on, a little wellness course here and there. So Another story that would be pretty wonderful to celebrate for a regenerative artistic institution would be honoring that the locus of judgment about what's right for a student to learn and when to learn it isn't demanded of, it's not coming from an institution, it's coming from the student. So we have the story where we have to be forced to learn these things, right? History and theory and so on. And what if instead students could be trusted to learn the material that they want to learn when they learn it? I'm sure this has been the experience for many people that it's like when you need to learn how to do something, you go to YouTube University, right? And you learn how to do your taxes, or you learn like what's wrong with my car right now. And by that same token, when the desire and the necessity are there to learn something, those resources are available. So teachers, instead of being the holders just of information, are shift over to the role really of being guides for their students. So somebody has a well of curiosity that they're exploring. Our role as teachers is simply to guide that curiosity, to push away impediments that would get in the way of that. And if there is information that's necessary to offer that. So this is just a kind of a soft ballpark of what we're aiming for the Soulforce Music School. One more thing to touch on is that, again, that what we're aiming to do is marry the most useful and beautiful parts of traditional conservatory education with a fundamentally different paradigm that's based on the well-being of the individual and the community. And that is also based on the belief that each person has within them the innate capacities to discover their greatest source of drive and mission in the world, and that our role is simply to guide that. So I hope this video was interesting and exciting and perhaps titillating for you. So I'll just do a brief checkout. So this is an opportunity again for us to take a moment, you and I together, to just notice what we're feeling and to name that. So I'm still noticing a little bit of anger, but it's a lot less. I'm noticing a lot of joy. I'm noticing some tiredness. I am noticing a sense of relief and a sense of ease. Alright, well, thanks so much for joining me. I hope this video was informative for you. And if you have questions, feel free to message either Joseph or I. And if you found this video interesting and you want to know a little bit more about what we're driving at, we're offering a free mini course right now. Joseph has this title memorized and I don't, but you can find it. It's 5 tips for basically how to do very difficult music in a way that's much easier. So you'll find that link in the description below, and of course feel free to subscribe if this video really touched something for you, and also feel free to check out the Soulforce Music podcast. All right, thanks everybody, and hope you're well, and see you next time.